It is the summer of 1984 in the flatlands of eastern Kansas. Paula Godfrey is 19 years old, fresh out of high school, and looking to land her first job. She answers an ad in the local paper. A man named John Robinson offers her a position. The catch, Paula must attend a training seminar out of town. On August 23rd, the young woman hops into a car with Robinson. It is the last time Paula Godfrey's parents will see their daughter alive. January 1985. Lisa Stacy is 19 years old, with a 5-month-old named Tiffany. No husband, and no way to support herself. Again, John Robinson comes to the rescue. Working through a local outreach group, Robinson offers Stacy money and sets her up in a motel. Lisa checks into the Roadway Inn on January 7th, 1985, and checks out on January 10th. The bill is settled by Robinson, and Lisa Stacy, like Paula Godfrey before her, disappears, this time with her 5-month-old daughter in tow.
There was a very good possibility that Mr. Robinson was in fact a serial killer.
Marty Ingram is a detective sergeant with Overland Park. In the spring of 1987, the department takes a call about Catherine Clampett, another woman who took a job with Robinson. Another woman now gone missing.
There were numerous females that had answered some ads in the newspaper regarding an opportunity to start a new life, whether that be in modeling, being an assistant, some type of a rouge to get females to meet him, and this would be the last time that they would be seen.
For 6 years, Robinson allows the community to grow comfortable with his presence. Then the serial killer begins to stir, and women once again begin to vanish. The first to notice, a cop who knows Robinson all too well. Keith O'Neill is a captain in the Overland Park PD and works the point on John Robinson's surveillance. His job, follow the suspect around town and see what he does with his day.
From 8:30 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon, he would be out. He would meet other females. We found out about some girlfriends that he had. But by 5 o'clock, virtually every day, he was home when his wife got home. They had dinner together, and he looked like an all-American family after 5 o'clock each day.
O'Neill discovers Robinson has women set up in a string of hotels throughout the area. One of them, the Extended Stay Hotel. Detective Mike Lowther is assigned to cover the location.
On a particular day, one local hotel did call us and informed us that he had made a reservation and that a woman had checked into the room that he had reserved.
The detectives rent a room adjoining Robinson's and wait for their suspect to arrive. When he does, investigators press their ears to the wall and listen as Robinson explains to the woman what he would like her to do.
At first, the conversation was very cordial. It was basically an introduction to her of the BDSM lifestyle, kind of the rules that govern it.
Detectives in the room adjacent to Robinson are in a difficult spot, not sure if they are listening to an argument over rough sex or a prelude to murder.
We'd hear, screaming, slapping. If that was any normal situation, we probably would have broke down the door. Under this one, we had to hold off and make a decision how much screaming was someone in trouble and how much of it was part of the BDSM lifestyle.
The surveillance team decides to sit tight, believing the woman to be safe and unwilling to blow their cover. They make the right decision. Robinson exits the hotel, and the woman eventually checks out, apparently unharmed. A month later, the woman, identified by detectives as Vicki Neufeld, turns up again, filing a complaint against Robinson for stealing a bag filled with her favorite sex toys. Another of Robinson's sex slaves also comes forward, claiming Robinson played a little too rough in one of their encounters. Detectives believe these women might be the break they are looking for.
When those two women came forward and wanted to press charges, that was the linchpin that put the case together. Everything that we had up to that point was pretty circumstantial, but when they came forward with actual charges against him, it opened the door for us to go ahead with the search warrants, and that led to his arrest.
On June 2, 2000, a judge grants an arrest warrant for John Robinson on a charge of battery. He also signs a slew of search warrants on Robinson's home, his rural farmland property, and his storage lockers. The team will look for Vicki Neufeld's sex toys, but hopes to find evidence of much more.
A judge steps into the serial killings investigation before charges are even filed.
He's put a gag order on all the major players in the Johnny Robinson case. Robinson remains jailed in Olathe, suspected in the murder of 5 women. Their bodies were found in barrels on his Lynn County farm and in a storage locker in Raymore.
With bodies being found across the countryside, John Robinson suddenly becomes big news. He refuses to talk to police, is arraigned on 5 counts of murder, and sits in a county jail awaiting trial. Meanwhile, the strange case of the Kansas serial killer is about to take yet another twist. On the outskirts of Chicago, 15-year-old Heather Tiffany Robinson sits in front of her computer, confused. Her Uncle John has just been arrested for murder, a fact the teenager finds hard to accept. She accesses a website on the case and pulls up photos of Robinson's suspected victims. One is of a baby, believed to be the missing daughter of a woman Robinson allegedly murdered. The woman is Lisa Stacy, the baby Heather recognizes as herself. Investigators traveled to Chicago and learned that in 1985, John Robinson sold a baby to his brother Donald and Donald's wife Frida. That baby grew up to be Heather. In fact, police recover a picture, taken they suspect just hours after Robinson killed Stacy. It's a family photo. John Robinson is in the front row. On his knee, Lisa Stacy's infant.
John Robinson's got that baby and posing for pictures in his house with that baby bouncing on his knee with his brother and sister-in-law there who have come down to Chicago to get their new adopted baby. He told them that through his connections in the community, he'd been able to find this baby whose mother had committed suicide in a hotel room.
Lisa Stacy's murder is added to the list of charges Robinson faces. A set of crimes for which the state of Kansas is prepared to seek the death penalty.
I have never prosecuted anybody in my 24 years as a prosecutor that was more deserving of the death penalty than John Robinson. It is impossible to describe or to estimate the amount of suffering John Robinson has inflicted on other people throughout his lifetime. We were successful in convicting him of everything, and in the penalty phase, the jury rolled with us and decided to recommend the death sentence, which the judge gave him.
The killer is removed from death row only long enough to face 3 more counts of murder in the state of Missouri for the deaths of Bev Bonner and Sheila and Debbie Faith, each found in a barrel inside Robinson's storage locker. Robinson pleads guilty to murdering all 3 and also pleads guilty to the homicides of 2 Overland Park women, Paula Godfrey in 1984 and Catherine Clampett in 1987. Robinson, however, refuses to reveal how he killed them or where their bodies might be found. Finally, he is returned to death row, the investigation over, the killing finally stopped. Mike and Jeff Jones have a problem. On April 16, 1979, they reported their mother, Harriet Simmons, missing. The day before, Harriet had climbed into her car in Raleigh, North Carolina for a weekend road trip to Nashville. The drive should have taken 8 hours. 5 days later, she still has not arrived. Ronnie Dement is Harriet's son-in-law. He joins the search and begins to retrace the route she would have taken to Nashville. After 2.5 hours of driving, he finds Simmons' car, parked in the exit ramp leading out of a rest stop.
Seeing the car where it was, I know it was out of character that her mom would never stop the car in that position. I just knew something happened as she was leaving that rest area. I didn't know what, but I knew she would never stop her car there.
Ronnie pulls over and calls 911. Inside the car, police find that Simmons' keys and purse are missing. In the back sits a flat tire, an indication that Harriet might have had car trouble and perhaps had asked a stranger for help.
We pretty much knew that she had had a flat tire, and whoever stopped to help her, probably did something to her.
Without a body and with no prints or other usable evidence from inside the car, the investigation into Harriet Simmons' disappearance quickly goes nowhere. 11 months pass, and then the other shoe drops. Simmons' disappearance matures into an undeniable case of murder.
I got the call around mid-morning that a passing motorist had found a skull in the woods. And so we did a grid search of the surrounding area and then located articles of clothing and additional bones and evidence in the leaves.
We opened the box, found...
Medical examiner Dr. John Butts determines the victim to be a white female between 45 and 55 years old. He notes 4 cuts in the victim's clothing and 4 nearly identical cuts in the victim's bones. Within a week, state investigators provide dental records on a missing woman. Dr. Butts compares the records to the Jane Doe and determines that she is Harriet Simmons. The discovery of a body moved Simmons' case from a disappearance to an unsolved homicide. The result, however, is the same. No suspects and no leads in the investigation. Meanwhile, a second body turns up, 18 miles from the Blue Ridge Parkway in Asheville, North Carolina. CSI Mike Wright takes another call for another body, this time on the banks of the French Broad River.
And she had been stabbed to the chest, and a local resident here had heard her call for help when she had crawled up out of the water, and he had attempted to give CPR.
The neighbor tells police that the girl died in his arms. The victim carries no ID and has suffered multiple stab wounds. Even as CSI works the scene, a second call comes in about a car found 8 miles upstream.
And the vehicle was in the river about 20 feet off the shore, upriver from the bridge. And the car was partially submerged about 20 feet off the bank.
We had no crime scene to work with in terms
Police wonder if the vehicle is related to the murder downstream. They track the license plates to a local family and a woman named Margaret McConnell.
They said that they had found the car in the river, and they explained what had happened. Then they asked some of the family to come downtown.
Margaret McConnell tells police that her 21-year-old daughter, Betty Sue, had taken the car to work earlier that evening and never came home. 2 hours later, Betty Sue McConnell is ID'd as the murder victim.
I can't explain how we felt, it was the most terrible thing I'd ever gone through.
Local detectives begin working the case with the help of the State Bureau of Investigation. A forensic examination of the vehicle yields no prints, no blood. Nothing in the way of a lead. After 3 months of legwork, detectives are resigned to their luck. Betty Sue McConnell's case joins Harriet Simmons in the cold files, where both will stay for 19 years. Until a recovering alcoholic feels the sobering sting of conscience. As Buncombe County Sheriff's Captain Pat Hefner listens, Jerry Harmon begins to talk about a night 19 years past. In August of 1979, Jerry Harmon is 19 years old and hanging out with a new pal, 22-year-old Terry Hyatt. At 2:30 a.m., the two men leave a bar and get into Hyatt's truck.
There was a young lady pulled up on the driver's side at a traffic light, and Terry made an obscene gesture towards her, and then when she turned to the left, he ran her off the road. And then he jumped out and ran up to her car and jerked the door open and yelled back at me and said, "Follow me." And he jumped in her car and took off.
Harmon follows behind Terry Hyatt, who drives a few miles and then turns down a dirt road.
And then he got the girl out of the car, came back to the truck, got into the truck with her, and I got away from there, you know, and it was obvious what was going on. He was raping this young lady, and I was just terrified. Well, he got in her car and started driving up and down the road extremely fast, you know, and I remember telling her, get out of here, go, leave. And she kept saying, "That's my sister's car, I can't leave my sister's car." And I said, "Forget your sister's car, you know, just get away from here."
The young woman, however, does not leave. Hyatt returns, pulls her back into her car, and once again tells Harmon to follow.
And no one could ever be as hard on me as I've been on myself. I should have done this, I could have done that, but at the time it was just, I was totally freaking out, and I just followed him. I couldn't comprehend what was happening. Why did I not try to do something? But still, the thought had never occurred to me that actually someone was going to die. That just didn't seem real, you know. Then we went, and he took her car by some water.
Hyatt pulls the girl out of the car and begins walking towards the water.
And then I heard this girl screaming, and it was, I assumed he was raping her again or something, you know. I mean, that's what I figured was going on. And he came back up there. And then it dawned on me. I didn't hear the girl anymore. And I said, "You killed that girl, didn't you?" And then he told me, yeah, he had.
Hyatt drives the girl's car a few miles upstream and runs it into the river.
Well, I was just freaked out, and he said, "You better not ever tell anybody about this, because you were here with me, and you'll go to prison the rest of your life just like I will." And,
For 19 years, Harmon never breathed a word. Now he tells it all to Pat Hefner, including the place where the woman's car was dumped, the French Broad River.
And that's what keyed me off, because I knew that they had recovered a body at or near the French Broad River from 1979 or 1980.
His statement about where it occurred, the description of her car, the fact that it was left in a river, all those statements that he made led us to believe that he knew exactly what he was talking about.
Benjamin and Shook believe Harmon, but would like more in the way of corroboration. Harmon then provides detectives with a second name.
He had mentioned that if we really wanted to verify his story, we need to talk to Mr. Hyatt's best friend at the time, which was Lester Dean Helms.
2 months later, Ann Benjamin tracks Lester Helms to a nursing home. While Helms is talking about murder, it does not appear to be the same murder Jerry Harmon shared with police. In Helms' statement, Terry Hyatt raped a woman and killed her, and then dumped her body in Buncombe County, some 18 miles from where Betty Sue McConnell's body was found.
As we're walking out to the car, I remember turning to Tim and saying, "What was that all about?" And he says, "I think I know."
I had read the file and it began to click. That sounds like the Harriet Simmons murder, because her skeletal remains had been found in Buncombe County up near the Blue Ridge Parkway.
Like McConnell, Harriet Simmons was abducted from her car. Like McConnell, Simmons was stabbed multiple times.
It had never been associated in any way with Betty Sue McConnell's abduction and subsequent murder. And we were both quite excited. We knew we had some good information and some good witnesses.
Investigators Benjamin and Shook believe that Terry Hyatt could be responsible for at least 2 cold murders. Then they find a third Hyatt victim, this one still very much alive.
When we looked up his record, we found that he had actually gone to prison in 1979. He had committed a kidnapping.
The kidnapping occurred just a few months after the second unsolved murder. Hyatt's kidnap victim, Carolyn Brigman, survived the attack and is still alive.
She was very willing to go ahead and testify in court, which we desperately wanted, and she agreed to.
Brigman's testimony is the final piece the state needs. Warrants are issued and police descend on Terry Hyatt's home in Asheville. Under questioning, Hyatt places himself at the scene of the McConnell crime, but says he did not kill her. When asked about Harriet Simmons, Hyatt lawyers up and is arrested. Assistant District Attorneys Don Gast and Rodney Hasty prepare a case for prosecution. The team decides to seek the death penalty. On January 6, 2000, Terry Hyatt's trial begins. On January 31, 2000, a jury finds Hyatt guilty on all counts. He is sentenced to die by lethal injection. In February of 2000, while Terry Hyatt sits on death row, his DNA is collected and entered into the state DNA data bank. There, it hits on yet another unsolved case, the 1987 rape and murder of a Charlotte woman named Jerry Ann Jones. When presented with the DNA evidence and a deal to avoid another death sentence, Terry Hyatt confesses to Charlotte authorities. On August 2, 2005, Hyatt pleads guilty to the murder of Jerry Jones.
Some days I think he should sit there and suffer, but I don't think he's doing that because I really don't think it bothers him. I may be wrong, but I really don't. So I think he should just be put to death. I really do.
"7 p.m. on Interstate 25. Headlights punch holes through the night, and a car travels north towards Wyoming. Behind the wheel, 18-year-old Lisa Marie Kimmel presses her foot to the floor, and her black sports car accelerates, carrying her deeper into the gathering darkness. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon when Ron and Sheila Kimmel walk into their home. A light on the answering machine flickers. Sheila presses play and listens. It's Ed Yurok, Lisa Kimmel's boyfriend.
We received a number of phone calls letting us know that Ed was trying to reach us and that she had not made it to his place that evening. And that's when we realized that something was desperately wrong.
Ed Yurok tells Lisa's parents their daughter never showed up at his home in Cody, Wyoming, and never called. Family and friends hit the interstate, retracing the route Lisa would have taken, looking for any sign of her or her car. A 2-door black Honda with the license plate, Lil Miss.
After the first day of searching, road searches and airplane searches, retracing her intended route, did not produce a car maybe off on the side of the road or down an embankment.
The next morning, Lisa's father files a missing persons report. At 2 p.m., a fisherman strolls along the riverbank after a successful catch and glances into the water. In the middle of the river bend floats a body. Investigator Dan Tholson watches as a woman, partially naked, is pulled from the water.
Typically, if you find a female that's been murdered alongside the road or in the river or something like that, there's been a sexual assault. So we were thinking that, but really didn't know for sure.
Tholson and his partner Jim Brose speculate the victim was thrown from the bridge less than a mile away. The investigators work the bridge's surface and give this theory some traction.
There was an area on the bridge, probably 12 inches by 18 inches where there was a large puddle of blood, and then you could see where blood spatters were on the concrete abutment that came up from the surface of the bridge.
The blood is collected and tagged. Meanwhile, Jane Doe's body is zipped into a bag and transported to a local funeral home for an official autopsy. Under the cold glare of the coroner's lights, the autopsy begins. Dr. James Thorpen compares dental x-rays from the corpse to current missing persons cases in the area. Lisa Marie Kimmel's x-rays are the first Thorpen pulls, and a perfect match. The woman taken from the North Platte River is the missing 18-year-old. The question now, how did she get there?
At the time, we had Lisa, but we didn't have a murder weapon. We didn't have her car. She was found partially clad, so most of her clothes are missing. And this car is a link. This car is very important to get back.
With few investigative cards to play, Natrona County reviews a report generated by profilers at the FBI, hoping that their expertise can breathe life into a stalled investigation. The resulting report points detectives in the direction of a white male, 20s to 30s, most likely still residing in the Casper area.
They also specifically described the person as being kind of a lone wolf type person who would prefer to be alone. And they thought probably that he had come into contact with her, at maybe a convenience store or something in the middle of the night, like that.
It was a cold case. We weren't actively working it anymore. I left, and it was hard. I was always thinking about Lisa Kimmel, so was Dan. And thinking, will we get this thing solved someday? Will that right lead come up? And I remember when I left, I said, Dan, before I die, call me and let me know you found him.
14 years later, Natrona County Sheriff's investigator Lynn Cohey knows it's a long shot, but decides the Kimmel file is worth a final look. Cohey sends semen samples recovered from autopsy to the state crime lab. A genetic profile is extracted and downloaded into the state's DNA databank. There, it is compared against more than 2,000 felony offenders from Wyoming. A few months later, Lynn Cohey's phone rings. The crime lab has a cold hit.
Of course, the first question out of my mouth, who is it? And Sandy Mays and Tilton Davis said, the guy's name is Dale Wayne Eaton, and he was in our penitentiary back in '98. So after I picked my jaw up off the floor, I started doing any and all research that I could find on Dale Eaton.
Dale Eaton's DNA went into the state databank after he was convicted on a federal firearms charge. According to prison records, he is in the middle of a 5-year stretch for that offense. Cohey and fellow detective Dan Tholson decided to pay Eaton a visit at a federal prison just outside Englewood, Colorado. On July 17, 2002, Lynn Cohey and Dan Tholson sit down with Dale Wayne Eaton and ask what he knows about Lisa Kimmel.
He said that he'd heard about the case on TV. He said he never knew Lisa, but he did say, well, wasn't that the girl that was on her way to Montana? And on that particular time, she was not on her way to Montana. She was on her way to Cody, Wyoming.
He denied ever knowing her, ever having any kind of contact, so he couldn't use that defense later that, he had sex with her and turned her loose and somebody else killed her. But as far as specifically admitting anything, he wouldn't, and he eventually got so dry-mouthed he couldn't talk anymore.
Eaton's mouth gets even drier when detectives tell him about the DNA match, linking him to semen recovered from autopsy. Suddenly, the convict doesn't want to talk at all. Detectives believe they have found Lisa Kimmel's killer, but still have some work to do. The DNA match establishing only that Eaton had sex with Lisa Kimmel, not that he killed her.
We wanted to be able to prove the case without the DNA, which, theoretically you couldn't do that because you got his name from the DNA, but we wanted to be able to do it without having to rely on the DNA.
Among the people they speak with, one of Eaton's neighbors in Manita, Wyoming, a woman named Doris Bukta.
He was a good neighbor. But he was, in my opinion, what I call weird.
Weird incorporates a wide range of behavior, including one day when, according to Doris, Dale Eaton started digging in his front yard.
My husband asked him, he said, "What are you digging, Dale?" And he said, "I'm digging a well." And he said, "Well, man, you're crazy. You can't dig a well out here. We have to go down almost 300 foot to get water." He was so weird anyway that I thought, well, he probably thinks he can dig a well.
According to a journal kept by Doris, Eaton began to dig in the days just after Lisa Kimmel disappeared. That, coupled with the size of the hole described by Doris, leads detectives to wonder if Dale Eaton was not digging a well, but a grave for Lisa Kimmel's long-lost car. At 10 a.m. on July 29th, detectives descend on Dale Eaton's property, armed with a warrant to search for the black Honda Lisa Kimmel was driving on the night she disappeared 14 years earlier. Within the first few hours of searching, investigators have uncovered a variety of car parts. A backhoe reaches into the earth just 8 feet down. The machine hits a gold mine.
The operator dug in and scraped back some dirt, and there was a chunk of metal sitting there, and it was the top of the driver's side door.
As the hole widens, detectives realize they have found not just a door, but Lisa Kimmel's entire car, buried whole in Dale Eaton's front yard. Dale Wayne Eaton is charged with the murder of Lisa Kimmel on April 21, 2003. Eaton is convicted of murder in the first degree and receives the death sentence.